I'm getting dinged. Okay, so somebody texted me. They text me right when I go on and start broadcast. Okay, this is just me playing Tetris. Whether I play well or poorly, I don't know. The main thing is there's these reports that I saw around midnight or 1 a.m. my time. I was up because of something involving an airplane. That's the best I can figure it out. And and with the airplane, woke me up. So I started seeing these reports, like some new website, according to mynintendonews.com, is talking about how Miyamoto said that Nintendo had a game similar to Minecraft during the N64 days. I don't doubt it, and that's kind of like an open challenge for someone to put on PlayStation or N64 Minecraft. And the reason I think it can be done is because of games like Battle Miner and Cube Creator 3D on the 3DS. But the 3DS is more similar, in my opinion, my look at the programming code, to a more like a Dreamcast or PS2. Games like Donkey Kong Country 3D and New Super Mario Bros. 2, though, shows that it can do at least Wii quality graphics. I'm going to regret putting that piece there. But the whole point is that Miyamoto said that, and a few years ago, Miyamoto... Well, what's this? Someone else is texting me? And, he said that he wished Nintendo had come up with Angry Birds. Exactly when would Nintendo have come up with Angry Birds or something similar? Because I remember once the Saturn and PlayStation hit, not so much with the 3DO, once the Saturn and PlayStation hit, games like Angry Birds would have been rejected outright at big companies. They wanted 3D. Everything had to be 3D. That's why I encourage you, the listener, to go ahead and take a look at that particular slice of gaming history, starting with the 3DO and so forth and so on. Almost everything had to be 3D. The only thing that was getting a pass and ripping consumers off at the used game stores, and this is kind of what kicked off the whole collect games crap, was the Street Fighter games. Darkstalkers, Street Fighters, King of Fighters. I understand, and a few other games like that were being hoarded and then, used as a leveraging tool against the consumer. When I say against, because these stores, what they would do is they would go into a Toys R Us and rip off the consumer by buying all the copies, and then Toys R Us doesn't care. They're like, oh, I guess we sold out of that game. So I'm not holding Toys R Us or Target or Kmart or Walmart or Electronics Boutique, remember them? I'm not holding any of them accountable for this, because they had nothing to do with it. This was entirely done by the stores at the time, the little mom and pop game stores, which aren't owned by mom and pops. They seem to be owned by douchebag dude bros, and they were really into, like, they would get all these copies of these two-dimensional, very animated, Japanimated, Street Fighter and Darkstalkers and King of Fighters and other like games, and just put a super high price, hurting the average consumer who couldn't get a hold of these games. So, you know, whoever's running things at Sony for the PS3 and PS4, well, God bless them, because I mean, I don't mean that lightly. I mean literally, God bless this guy or woman, because this person or persons has seen fit to put games like Capcom vs. SNK 2 or Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on the PS4 at a reasonable price. These are games I've seen go, but not online, but in person. If I go to Joe Blow's game store in Las Vegas, he's got a ridiculous price on it, trying to tell me it's collectible. Well, it ain't collectible. I can easily download it. So going back to that, other than those games, the whole push at the time was all about 3D. Everything was about 3D. That's why Tomb Raider was given such a push by the media. It was all about 3D. Everything was 3D. Super Mario 64 just amplified it, and the quasi 3D-ness of the excellent Mario RPG of Super NES and the rendered graphics of Donkey Kong Country, everything was 3D. Angry Birds wouldn't have had a chance, or something similar to it, even with the Mario name, unless it came out on Game Boy. This is pre-Game Boy Color. It sure as heck wouldn't have come out on the Super NES, because Nintendo at this particular time, as with other gaming companies, but Nintendo in particular, was under the last days of Howard Lincoln. This really was a complete and absolute fight for domination of a generation of gaming. So, I mean, people forget that this is way before the Sega was still in the game, and while they had pretty good success with the Saturn in Japan, those were mostly due to anything from quirky 3D games to quirky two-dimensional games. There's like a ninja game. You know what? If you want more information on the Saturn and Japan, go ahead and on YouTube, go to subscribe to RetroCore's channel, and he has all kinds of specials on all kinds of things gaming. He would be the guy to watch shows from, all about the Japanese gaming experience, including his very rare, he had a Sega Saturn something special that he claims is missing from his Sega domain website. Yeah, he also runs the website Sega domain. I always thought it was named after what's that? There's this these commercials in Japan with this Sonny Chiba looking guy who was beating people up to force them to play the Sega Saturn. So anyways, I happen to own whoops. I'm not paying attention here. I happen to own a lot of actual Japanese. No, I think I want to do that. Sega CD. Whoops. Sega CD. Excuse me. Saturn CD games. I mean, 3DO not so much. So, but I do remember the 3DO was kind of the experiment. If companies did something and they did it on 3DO, it was to see what they could later do on systems like the Saturn. And but the Saturn, from what I've heard number crunchers. That's a type of programmer. I've heard them praise the Saturn as like the perfect number crunching computer. On the other hand, I've heard from other programmers that they absolutely hated the Saturn. Now, this is all contemporary, as in these, what I'm relaying is testimony from actual programmers that I knew. I'm not going to say how I know. During the Saturn day. The reason I don't say how I know is I don't want to get anyone in trouble with any NDAs that might still exist. Yes, it might seem like, oh, that's 20 years ago. You wouldn't believe how petty some computer companies are. I have color dyslexia. That's okay. Not really playing for anything more than I'm just playing. So Miyamoto saying that, yeah, we wanted to do games like Angry Birds or whatever. I mean, were these things that actually came up at Nintendo? I'm just curious about that, because it would seem to me that they would never have done this during the N64 days. The N64 had some advantages that were in concert with the PlayStation. This is what killed Saturn development for the West. The N64 and the PlayStation have the same family of processors. They're based on the SGI workstations. The Nintendo 64 has the, I believe it is the 4300 series CPU from the SGI workstations, or a clone of it, which is code compatible, and they're all code compatible. They're also code compatible with the PS2. What do you call it? The PlayStation had I think a 3500 series SGI CPU. This is all stuff I haven't looked into. Oh, wow. At least 2001, maybe 2000. So this is just from memory, and I think the PS2 had a 5300 series SGI CPU in the Emotion engine. So it was a 64-bit system. I'm not aware of any true 128-bit game systems that has ever existed. So that code compatibility is why a handful of games, sometimes from the same developer, didn't have any issues being put on, other than the storage space problem, being put on the N64, and sometimes even enhanced. While on the other hand, the Saturn version could have been handled by the B team, an outside developer, or by the same programmers, but they're not putting their all in it because, well, it's not going to sell as much. And that's something we see today. Why is the Wii U? It's an anomaly. It sells the most software, but it has the smallest user base. And it's just weird like that. But I, as a programmer, if I had to do other versions of the game, I would not develop for Wii U. Oh no way. I like PowerPC processors, but I like modern PowerPC processors. If I was a programmer, I'm not a professional programmer. I tinker and I go into code on certain things to customize my own programs. But no, I don't program for a living. Just knowing what I know about programming, though, the power architecture, the PowerPC architecture is excellent, but it is not the same code execution and implementation as the PS4 or the Xbox One, which is based on not true x64. It's based on some kind of weird hybrid where it is x64 processors accessing data in a very weird x86 way. AMD's x64 processors are much more code compatible with x86 code than Intel's x86 processors. But we're talking about minor quibbles here. But the Wii U uses a 32-bit G4 processor. It's the same family and series of customized processor based on whatever the GameCube had made for it. I think it's called the Broadway processor. So it's not necessarily the same G4 that would be in a Mac, but at the same time it kind of is. And the last major program holdout, 10.4 Fox, 10.4 Bird, they may not even be supporting PowerPC architecture after a few more updates to 10.4 Fox, which is the Firefox branch for PowerPC, Power Architecture CPUs. That reason is also simple, is that there's certain things that these power-based CPUs don't do very well. If the person has an inexperience with the code. Whoever's doing 10.4 Fox, he seems to have some pretty good experience with the code. So, credit's given there. But it's the same reason that the cell processor is rejected outright. It's not the best. In fact, the cell is a very poor processor. It is code compatible with PPC, Power PC, and Power Architecture. It is in that family, but it executes code way differently. Its cores aren't true computer cores in the way it handles data. I don't mean data as in Brett Spiner. Spinner? I forgot how to say his last name. No, it's a tad different. And it could totally drive a programmer up the wall. And from what I've heard, it did. In comparison to the G5 derivative found in the Xbox 360, so, oh, I thought that was a block. That's a block. That's the problem with preview. Sometimes I'm looking at that instead of looking at the actual piece. It's a problem goes back to the earliest days of Tetris for me. So yeah, the Wii U has 3 cores, and one core has to be completely dedicated to the operating of the system, not the operating system, which is part of system operation. I mean, it has to be completely, totally dedicated to running the system at all times. Now, it has unified RAM, so even though this much can go to video, this much can go whatever, it can also say, well, you know, if you need more, take more if you're not using more. Oops. Here, let's get rid of that. But even though technically it could execute both cell to a degree and definitely execute the Xbox code minus whatever it needs for RAM, cache, all that stuff, it's not any good. Now, what does this have to do with what Miyamoto's saying? Well, again, it's classic Nintendo stubbornness for him to say that. What's strange is I'm not seeing it with PlayStation VR, but I have a more practical application, and I think video games is the wrong place for virtual reality. It always has been, ever since the days of the Virtual Boy. To me, it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. If we can get virtual reality for drone use, medical use, stuff like that, stuff I've seen sci-fi writers talk about or write about or promote. I believe that's entirely the way to go. I mean, I've been whoops, no, let's just let it go here. I've been arguing since the 1990s for solar cell paint, and I've read a report just within the last 2 weeks that yes, someone else has come up with the idea. I'm not doing it to get rich. Maybe I feel things like electricity or even toilet paper are necessities that a person needs in a modern civilization, and they shouldn't be gouged to use such services. Okay. So now you know that. Wow, I totally screwed up. That's okay. And I think a better application of VR technology. First off, the push for all this VR stuff seems 100% artificial. It's not organic. It doesn't feel organic. It doesn't have an organic feel. in the marketing, as in this is something that has happened. It's like, oh, well, this is the killer app. No. You don't determine at a company what the killer app is. If the killer app is something from R.C. Madiak's, if you know who that guy is, I have nothing against him. I've enjoyed his games, or that Skunk Game company or individual who makes games for the Wii U, like slot machines and stuff. But if that's the killer app, that's the killer app. The killer app cannot be foisted upon people, otherwise it's fake. And to a large degree, with everything surrounding Sony, actually, I've seen that in gaming, where everything seems fake. With Sony, especially. Microsoft to a smaller degree, but with Sony, I mean, lots of fakeness. Lots of lies and artificiality, and nothing organic about things that have been foisted upon the gaming public. I mean, I don't find a demand for virtual reality, and there won't be. It will find its niche. It has to be cheap. Everything has to be cheap. Nothing is cheap in the beginning, but it has to be cheap, and it's not cheap right now. It's grossly overpriced, even though the technology has existed since the late 1980s. But a lot of people aren't computer scientists who have to study computer history, so... but, I mean, I definitely think it would do good for medical technology or something. There's no reason why it would have any practical application whatsoever in video gaming. I mean, Battlezone, yeah, that's a novelty. Oh, we're going to put Battlezone in virtual reality. It already was. That's the other thing. This is why I think the 2DS is a superior form of the 3DS, if they had a new 2DS. I don't care about 3D. You see the backgrounds here on this Tetris thing. Okay, in a lower resolution like what I'm broadcasting at, and what this recording will be archived within, I completely understand that the 3D-ness won't be as dynamic as it should be, but if 3D can totally be done without any glasses or any strange filters or funky screens or whatever, then I think it's a very good thing. I think that was achieved way back in the 3DO days. So this is to me 3D enough. I guess in my own once I turned 35, I could no longer see 3D, so I stopped going to 3D movies and stuff like that. So I'm hoping VR can implement 3D without being 3D, and allow people to use it for medical operations from abroad or something like that. The robotics are almost there, and I think that would be very good to have those kind of robotics available, so people can get the necessary medical care all across the world, or even beyond, if we start traveling on starships or whatever. There's other complications with space, especially unfiltered radiation that just goes through any spacecraft that exists right now. And obviously, food replicators would be nice, and I could tell the replicator I need ramen, no sodium. Yeah, sodium's a big problem. I believe sodium is the reason why we have a bunch of health problems worldwide. And, oh, holy cow. Okay, I got a phone call. Hello. What's up?